Hey guys! So we recently got back from our trip to Italy and thought we'd share a little about it with you. So we were in Italy for a total of 12 nights. We flew into Milan and then drove 4 hours to Ortisei, which is located in the Dolomites. This is where we plan to spend the next 3 days. We stayed at a cute bed and breakfast in Ortisei in Val Gardena. We really liked the hotel, the town, and the overall area for our first time in the Dolomites. We started off the second day by eating the complimentary breakfast in our hotel, and it was delicious. We then took a lift up to Siena, which is one of the most beautiful and photographed mountain ridges in the entire world. Many people just do the short walk to the ridge, but we wanted to make a day of it. We hiked around 7 or 8 miles in the area and stopped at the Ferenzi hut during the hike, where we were able to eat a delicious lunch and see a lot of cows and horses. I was shocked at how inexpensive the lunch was for the location and scenery, around $25 total. Although the first mile or so with the Siena Ridge is probably the best part of the hike, the rest of it is still insanely beautiful. Cameron said it was probably her favorite hike that she's done. The next morning we took the Alpe dei Suissi lift up to the top of a mountain where we got to hike around 7 or 8 miles. It was mostly flat, so I'd say that almost anyone could do some hiking in this beautiful valley. The views were gorgeous, and at the end of the hike, we ate at the restaurant at the top of the mountain. The food was amazing and the views were beautiful. And the crazy part is, it was once again only around $25. It's absolutely wild. After lunch, I drove to the Dante Serpes, I think that's how you say it, lift in Selva and did the Pues Oro Altopiano trail. It was so beautiful. Walking through the different rock formations and looking down into the many valleys and canyons. The hike was about 10 miles long, and unfortunately it rained on me the last 2 miles. Even still, this is easily one of the best hikes I've ever done. The next morning we packed up and headed out to Tuscany. It was around a 6-hour drive, but we broke it up with a stop in Florence. Parking in Florence was a nightmare, but once we were there, it was great. We only spent a couple of hours there since we had been to Florence in 2019, so we mostly just hit our favorite spots and walked around the city some. Some streets were overrun with people, but it was still such a beautiful place. After Florence, we left and headed straight to our hotel in Pienza. The next morning, I woke up early and went on a run to check out the Gladiator's Villa. As a big fan of the Gladiator movie, that was really cool, and the scenery was really pretty right after sunrise. We spent the day visiting a few Tuscan towns, and we started in Montepulciano, which was really hilly but also very pretty. We got some paninis and gelato and walked around looking at the scenery and the cute shops. After leaving there, we stopped off on the side of the road to see, I'm gonna butcher this, but Cipressi di San Quirico d'Orsia on the way to see Montalcino. Montalcino seemed like a very cute, sleepy, but very cute little place that we enjoyed walking around. Very nice streets. There's a really cool, skinny looking bell tower, but honestly the coolest part was getting to climb the fortress there. I mean, a castle in Tuscany, that is like peak coolness for sure. So afterwards we went back to Pienza and walked around there to see the shops and everything going on. I'd seen so many cheese shops in Tuscany, so we finally ate at a place that specialized in that for dinner, and it was fantastic. We grabbed some of the best gelato of the whole trip and went to the edge of town to watch the sunset over the Tuscan hills. Man, I miss Tuscany. The following morning, we packed up and headed a little farther north. On our way to our next hotel, we stopped in Siena for a few hours. We visited Siena in 2019 as well and loved it. So we grabbed some pizza there from one of our favorite places and got some gelato, of course. We enjoyed walking around and checking out the shops and churches nearby. I'd forgotten how much I liked the Duomo in Siena. We got to see the crypt, the baptistry, and we also got to walk on top of the old wall that was supposed to be part of the church until the Black Plague hit and halted construction. This is a really awesome church to visit. We also checked out the Piazza del Campo, which is one of the coolest piazzas in all of Europe, in my opinion. We love getting to visit Siena again. Afterwards, we drove to our bed and breakfast not too far away, and it was the coolest place ever. It was in the country, a little off the beaten path, and it had these amazing views. We got to watch the sunset from the hammock and a really cool swing outside. And from the view, you could see Monte Rigironi and San Gimignano as well, which was super cool. And the craziest part is we only paid around $70 a night for this view. For $70 a night in Fayetteville, you will probably get to look out and see a dumpster behind an Exxon gas station. So the point is, traveling does not have to break the bank if you know what you're doing. So we got to our bed and breakfast, and then we left to pick up some delicious hamburgers and to do laundry. And you know Cameron, always hustling and never letting anything stop her from doing a great job. She did some real estate work there as well. Speaking of, if you're looking to buy or sell your house, we would love for you to reach out to us because we enjoy helping people achieve their real estate dreams. So please feel free to reach out anytime. The next morning, we ate breakfast at the hotel and it was incredible. The view and the food were both wonderful and it was an awesome experience. Afterward, we drove to San Gimignano. We got some gelato at a shop that evidently won Best Gelato in the World once or twice a few years back, and it was so good. We enjoyed walking around and checking out the town, and we even stumbled on a line of luxury sports cars going through the town, and so we followed them to what seemed to be some kind of a car show. And even though I'm not a huge car guy, it was still super cool. When we went to visit the main church, they made Cameron put on a cover-up over her shorts in order to go in, which she was not a fan of, but I thought it was very funny. The mosaics in the church were really cool. Overall, this town was one of our favorite stops. It had some amazing shops. There were a lot of cool places there. We didn't have a ton of time left in the day, so we decided to check out Certaldo next, which was a nearby town that's small, very quaint. So we checked out their church and a few museums while we were there. On our walk back, we stopped in a city square where they were having some kind of a local festival going on. There was a cover band playing and lots of different tents set up. So we grabbed some pizza and enjoyed the music. So we made it back to our B&B and caught the sunset. This was our last Tuscan sunset. The following morning, we drove to Florence, where we dropped off our rental car and had sunrise pictures made. We then took a train from Cinque Terre, which is a stretch of 5 different seaside towns that you can hike between. We stayed in Vernazza and really enjoyed it. We made it in with enough time to grab dinner and watch the sunset over the Mediterranean Sea. The next morning, we took a 5-minute train ride to the largest of the 5 towns, Monterosso, so we could hike from there back to Vernazza. The hike was about 2 miles with a lot of initial elevation gain, But it was a really beautiful trek, and a lot of the time you were walking through vineyards and you could see the water, so it was really nice. We also passed the guy on the trail playing an accordion. We had an awesome lunch back in Vernazza at this place owned by two Sicilian brothers, and I even had the first cannoli of my life that I actually really liked. After that, we took another 5-minute train ride to Manarola, and we got to swim there for the first time in the Mediterranean. The water was so clear and it felt amazing. It was such an awesome experience. And there was this giant rock in the bay that people were climbing up to jump off of, so naturally I had to do that as well. Swimming there honestly was one of the highlights for both of us. We went back to Vernazza and hung out there for a little bit. For dinner, I actually got another sandwich with tuna, onions, pesto, which the pesto is famous in this region, pesto, tomato, and mozzarella on focaccia bread, and it was so good. We then got some gelato and watched the sunset again. I accidentally dropped a little bit of gelato in the water, and the fish swarmed it like you would not believe. The next morning, I woke up early and hiked to Corniglia before taking the train back to Vernazza. We had pictures made in Vernazza that morning that turned out awesome. Afterwards, we grabbed some brunch and then went swimming in the Vernazza harbor this time. The water was cooler, but sitting out on the rocks in the sun after swimming felt so good, and we really loved getting to do that. I'm pretty sure Cameron would have sat there all day if I would have let her. Instead, we took a quick train ride to Rio Maggiore, the last of the 5 towns that we hadn't seen. While we were there, Cameron got a slice of pizza and I got a cone of fried seafood that I'd seen a lot of people get in the different towns, and it was honestly so good that I had to get another one. We then headed back to Vernazza and completed our ritual of eating gelato and watching the sunset. The following morning, we woke up early to get a breakfast pastry and to eat it while looking out at the harbor one last time. We packed up and headed to Verona to enjoy Lake Como. On the way, we went through the Milan Central Station, which was a really beautiful station. There was also a place just outside of the station with the best poke bowl ever. And while we were in Verona, we got to stay at, honestly, the best bed and breakfast ever. The owner was so helpful and kind, and I'll show you the coolest part of it in just a minute. When we got there, we walked down to a little beach area and hung out there for a bit. And then we walked into the church in the main square. We also went to Villa Monastero, which was like a 2-minute walk from our hotel. The gardens were absolutely gorgeous, especially with Lake Como as the backdrop. And we got to tour the mansion there as well. We ate at a pizza place for dinner that was really good. And then for sunset, we went to our hotel's rooftop terrace. This was what I was telling you, it was so great because this had to be the best view in the whole city for sunset. It was so incredible. And honestly, the price of the hotel was probably what you would spend for a night at a hotel in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is just crazy. The next morning, I went on a run around the lake and it was so peaceful. We then had the biggest and the best breakfast I've ever had that was included in a hotel stay. Afterwards, we got some bad news though. There was a strike by the ferry workers, so we didn't get to go to Bellagio or to any of the villas that we were planning on checking out that day. We changed our plans and ended up checking out Castello di Vezio, which was an old castle on the hill above Verona. On our way, we stopped in this little church and sat in the quiet square outside of it. When we made it back to town, we got some gelato, and I know you're thinking that we got gelato 100 times on this trip, which we kind of did, but I'm not exaggerating when I say that the worst gelato I had was at least as good as the ice cream from Cold Stone. and cheaper. A little later on, we got dinner at the same restaurant because all the other places we looked at were booked because of some local event. And then we watched sunset from the rooftop one last time before heading home in the morning. Overall, this was an incredible trip. It actually felt like 4 completely different trips because of the different locations we visited while we were here. I hope if you go to Italy that this will be of value to you while you're planning your own trip. If you have any travel or real estate questions, feel free to reach out to us, and don't forget to subscribe. We will see you guys next time.